As the poll numbers narrow, it's all hands on deck to get out the votes. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and an army of surrogates hit the campaign trail. It's Senator Orrin Hatch making a big pitch for the GOP in Arizona.
This Donald Trump is something very rare and very special.
While President Obama calls on Democrats to send the GOP a message.
You can't boo. He can't hear you boo, but he can hear you vote.
Tonight, with days to go, a final call for supporters to hit the polls and undecideds to make a choice here on Politics Unplugged. Good evening, I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And with us, we're just about one full day away from the election, and we're being joined today by some political veterans or observers here in Arizona, Barrett Marson and Laurie Roberts, a columnist from the Arizona Republican. I want to start by taking a look at the latest numbers from the CNN map here that shows this race has really tightened a lot here. According to this map, Hillary Clinton right now would be short of that 270 threshold in the Electoral College to win the race outright. States like Ohio, Utah, and Maine's 2nd congressional district are moving from battleground toss-up category to the toss-up category and leaning now towards Mr. Trump heading into the final days of the election. We're going to start with you, Laurie. This is the first time on the show. Welcome here. What do you think is driving this right now?
Everyone agrees on.
Oh, I think it started actually even before the James Comey thing. I think what's driving it is people don't like either of these candidates, and you're getting closer and closer to having to make a decision. And nobody wants to. And I just have to wonder, like here in Arizona, how many people will decide we're just going to not vote for either of them, which is likely going to hurt Hillary Clinton.
Can you imagine if we had a Joe Biden at the top of the Democratic ticket or a Marco Rubio at the top of the Republican ticket? How different this race would be.
Or is it a little bit like football, you know, like the most popular guy is the backup quarterback when your team's not doing well?
Well, I don't think there's anybody who's more popular, who could be described as most popular in this race. It is it's not even between lesser of two evils. It's the person I can stomach the most.
Yeah, and the least, or
the least. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe so. But I think a lot of it is this unrelenting email. People have forgotten about female genitals and access Hollywood entirely. Donald Trump is
and that's an interesting point, because some people have said, like, look, this email thing is like a year, 2 years old. It keeps hurting Hillary Clinton, but the shelf life for a Trump scandal seems to be about a week or two, and then it goes away.
Because he usually opens his mouth again and says something else, and this time I think that his people have a clamp on his mouth or something. Or they're giving him drugs.
Agree.
Oh,
when you look at the last week or so of Donald Trump, if he had run that campaign that he's run the last week for the last 6 months, this also might be a little different race. He hasn't made the wild craziness accusations at his events. He's been here in Mesa. He hasn't done anything, in Arizona. He hasn't done anything crazy. It has been a different Donald Trump the last week than it has been the last 6 months.
Now, Laura, you said you thought this started a little bit before the Comey letter, but how much do you think this email is playing into this right now, particularly that Comey letter?
I think that it just started a natural tightening up, and then the Comey letter hit, and it was like an explosion. And from there, you've just had this continued, you know, the WikiLeaks and the additional FBI things that come out. And whether or not there's anything to all of this, it puts front and center the issue that has always been her problem, which is people don't trust her. Whether or not that's fair or not, it's dogged her whole career. I get calls from people saying, why aren't you writing about the fact that she, all the murders that she and Bill committed?
Well, and that's an interesting thing, because there are polls out there that show that she is less trustworthy than Donald Trump. Donald Trump, they've done analysis on this that was averaging at one point during the campaign 1 lie every 3.5 minutes while he was on stage. What's the deal there?
Well, you know, it's funny. Donald Trump had a great debate. A lot of people will say his third debate was a great debate, it was his best debate. And he still lied his way through it.
Except that he said he may not accept the results of the election, which is kind of a...
I bet he will if he wins.
Yeah, unless he wins. But, you know, I'm old enough to remember about last week when the Hillary campaign was trying to expand the map. And they were, you know, talking about this electoral landslide. And now all of a sudden, you know, it's getting back to the basics in 270.
And you're not hearing any more talk of the Democrats taking over the Senate
No.
either.
Absolutely not.
And that's a difference of a week. Last week when she announced that she was coming, or 2 weeks ago when she announced that she was coming to Arizona last week, she was looking not just to win the state, but to create a landslide, and to say, when Donald Trump says this election was rigged, he says, hey, I won Arizona. This was a groundswell for me. And it evaporated last Friday, a week ago Friday, like that.
Yeah, now speaking of Arizona here, now we did mention earlier that Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah was in the state to stump for Mr. Trump here in the last few days of the election. Now, he was supposed to be here on the show, but canceled last minute, but we did want to play you a little bit of what he had to say during an appearance here at a rally out in the East Valley. Check it out.
And you have Donald Trump, who didn't need this pain. He didn't need to do this job. Very, very successful businessman who, you know, he's had his ups and downs, but that's also good. It helps him to know just exactly what all of us go through in this life and some of the suffering and pain that people just like you and I have to go through. Let me tell you, I've been through a lot of wars. I've seen a lot of politicians. I've seen a lot of people who claim that they're going to do a good job. But I got to tell you, this Donald Trump is something very rare and very special.
Donald Trump is something, no doubt.
Now, does this surprise you, considering his religious background, him coming out in support of Donald Trump?
Where do you go if not to Donald Trump? I mean, there are very few, other
you go the Jeff Flake route.
You can, but very few did that, and I think that's to his credit that he stood on his principles.
And I think the reason why you're seeing polls tightening is Republicans are coming home.
We've seen a lot
of the base of the party, which had been unaccepting of Donald Trump, have now finally said, all right, it's either Hillary or Trump, and I just can't stand Hillary. Yeah. So, and in fact, you know, up until the Comey letter, I had actually been sort of thinking we were going to see a 2 or 3% depressing of the Republican vote. But that Comey letter, I think, really encouraged Republicans to come out.
Well, let me throw in one other thing, that political analysts I've talked to suspect that there's an undervote, an undercount on Donald Trump, much like there was in the Evan Mecham days, that people just aren't saying who they're going to vote for because they don't want to be lambasted.
Well, and there's also a sense out there that some of these polls out there are really relying on likely voters, which is really the best case scenario and the most effective way to judge most elections. But this is anything but a typical election, and there may be a lot of people who have taken themselves out of voting for the past 10 years getting back into this and casting ballots this year.
Young people, and also the Ninth Circuit this past Friday lifting or not a stay, but an injunction so that now you can do ballot harvesting. Those Latino groups that in the past have gone around and collected ballots can now do that again. I'm thinking I might drop off one of mine to one of them because I don't want to brave the lines on Tuesday.
What is interesting, we've also heard Donald Trump talk about the stupid leadership here in this country. I mean, his words, not mine, and he's criticized the establishment. I mean, Orrin Hatch, I mean, this guy is the embodiment of the establishment, along with other senators like John McCain. I mean, Orrin Hatch ran for president back in 2000. What's going on there?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You know, Donald Trump makes everyone a target to fit his narrative, but yet he, you know, still expects the establishment to rally around him. People like Orrin Hatch probably figure better to have a president who will sign my bills to cut taxes and to, you know, impose, you know, get rid of regulation than a Hillary Clinton who will veto them.
I do, though, have to give Donald Trump some credit. Doesn't happen often, but I do have to give him credit. He has tapped in to a sentiment in this country that we distrust government, we don't like it, we want to change it, and this whole outsider thing, I think he's right about that. I think some of these people have been there too long. They're unwilling to compromise, to find solutions. The whole deal is the fight, not to change the country.
How is this going to set up everything for the post-election for whoever wins out there? It seems like it's going to be extremely toxic and almost, you know, it's going to be almost impossible to govern.
Well, if you want to spend a day on social media and look at the rage and outrage out there toward government, toward our institutions, you know, I think that will in and of itself make you crazy. And so that will lend itself to people questioning whether we had a rigged election, whether our election processes were actually worthy of government.
All right. All right, we're going to have to take a quick break. We got a lot more still to come up on Politics Unplugged. Coming up next, more on this election where the surprises, they never stop.
As I said at the time, and I'm not going to get into criticizing or attacking Donald Trump, but I'll just give you this response. I am not in the habit of supporting people who attack my wife and attack my father.
That was Ted Cruz just 4 months ago. Now he's on the campaign trail for Donald Trump. Still ahead, shifting alliances and partisan politics. Plus, Battleground Arizona, a closer look at why the Grand Canyon state looks purple. Still ahead on Politics Unplugged.
TV wants to brighten your season with a vacation to the Disneyland Resort. Experience the new Festival of Holidays, a celebration of traditions featuring food, music, entertainment, and World of Color Season of Light in Disney California Adventure Park. And don't forget the classic holiday parade, attractions, and more. You can win a vacation to the Disneyland Resort from 3TV, including hotel stay and 3-day tickets. Just watch Good Morning Arizona at 6 all this week for the code word. Then go to acfamily.com/holiday to enter.
Arizona needs clean, affordable energy. That's why Boyd Dunn, Bob Burns, and Andy Tobin are running for Corporation Commission. Arizona's sustainable solar team. They'll work to keep electricity costs low and support clean, sustainable energy. Dunn, Burns, and Tobin know that Arizona's power grid must be reliable, and they'll represent Arizona taxpayers, not out-of-state special interests. Boyd Dunn, Bob Burns, Andy Tobin, Arizona's sustainable solar team.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? And you can tell them to go themselves.
You know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
You got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember.
Diego Rodriguez, I like his experience. He's been a prosecutor and a defense attorney.
Diego will be tough on violent crime.
He's got a plan to reform the system, to make it more fair.
The other guy is not getting the job done.
Montgomery let those prison guards off too easy.
The ones that were accused of rape and sexual assault.
Bill Montgomery isn't keeping us safe.
I'm voting for Diego Rodriguez for county attorney.
For equal justice. To keep us safe.
Diego Rodriguez
for county attorney.
Colorado lawmakers are now calling out Arizona's anti-pot ads as inaccurate. Not true.
Prop 205 means taking marijuana out of the criminal market and putting it in the hands of licensed tax-paying businesses, generating millions of dollars in tax revenue for K-12 education.
Law enforcement will be able to focus on more serious crimes.
We can guarantee a safer and a more consistent product.
It's time for a more sensible approach. Better schools.
Safer communities.
It's time to regulate and tax marijuana. Vote yes on 205.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Arizona Republic columnist Laurie Roberts and political strategist Barrett Marson is sticking with us. Now, Donald Trump leads Clinton by 5 points now in Arizona among likely voters with 49% of the vote. Clinton earning about 44% of the vote. Gary Johnson has slipped down to 5%, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein has just 1%. Now, Trump is also leading Clinton by 6 points in Nevada. Should that worry Democrats a lot here in Arizona?
Well, I've heard a lot of negative things about that Nevada poll, but I would say that Arizona and Nevada, if Latinos actually come out and vote, and you know, Laurie's newspaper has talked about over the last decade or so how this is going to be the year where Latinos come out and vote. And I actually believe this will be the first year that that actually happens. I think Latinos will come out and vote in higher numbers than we've seen in the past. If that happens, we have a very close state for Hillary Clinton and down ballot.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you how big of a difference and how much of a force is the Hispanics going to play this year in this election? Because here in Arizona, I mean, they're overwhelmingly opposed to Donald Trump, opposed to Joe Arpaio.
Well, that alone should be enough to get them out to vote, although I note that in 2012 they didn't come out to oppose Arpaio, so you have to note that. I think that one of the things that will really muster them to get out and vote is the thing that Jan Brewer said a couple weeks about, you know, dismissive of them, going, oh no, they don't vote. That's like the thing that you put on the bulletin board if you're the Chicago Cubs and somebody says something nasty about you the night before the big game for a motivational thing. And I think that will motivate people.
And you know, we are seeing a ground game. Hillary Clinton, George Soros is putting in a couple of $1 million behind anti-Joe Arpaio efforts. So we're seeing the state Democrat Party, Hillary Clinton, and outside groups all trying to muster up some votes for liberal issues and causes.
Now, despite some of the polling numbers for Clinton, she definitely has not written off the state just yet. She's pumping more money into the state, and she also was here in the Valley last week to pump up another group of voters out there, millennials. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Let's make that the story of this
this going to work and drive out that young vote?
I mean, you know, we have always looked in politics at how do we get young people to vote. They just don't vote in high numbers. And so if they do come out this year, I mean, again, the Democrats are putting a lot of marbles behind the Latino vote and the youth vote, neither of which come out.
I know how to get them out. All you have to do is put a couple of things on the ballot, like, oh, let's say, legalize marijuana and raise the minimum wage. I suspect that will bring out a few.
I absolutely agree. And of course, I work for the.
I was going to say,
I work for the 205, right. The Yes on 205 campaign, but I believe that minimum wage and the 205 campaign are going to bring out. And
it's something that hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, but I have also heard that as well from a lot of political strategists, that minimum wage issue is really key, and it's really exciting a lot of people to come out and vote yes for that.
And these are people who probably haven't voted before a lot. So it's almost like it's an election that's impossible to predict, because likely voters, which is what we've always used, aren't necessarily. We may have very unlikely voters who come out this time.
Absolutely, unlike, you know, and again, remember, a lot of these pollsters look at people who voted in the last 3 of 4 elections. Well, if you're 24 years old, you weren't even barely 18 the last time we had an election.
All right. So, all right. Now, we saw that Clinton was here, but Donald Trump was also here last week. And he was here, you know, kind of late in the game for a Republican here in a red state like this. Usually they have that all locked up. Now, he was pitching to win over undecided voters and to go after Mrs. Clinton on something that already plays well with his base, that she's just not trustworthy. Take a listen.
Hillary set up an illegal server for the obvious purpose of shielding her criminal conduct from public disclosure and exposure. She set up this illegal server knowing full well that her actions put our national security at risk.
Is this the best strategy to be in a campaign like this? Now, your closing messages, don't you want to be a little bit more positive? No. But this is like trench warfare.
You either like Trump or you despise him. The best he can do is get people who are, maybe I gotta hold my nose and vote for Hillary, not to.
Yeah, I don't think there's any undecideds, like I don't know enough about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I think there's unwanted. They don't want to vote for either side, and I've got, you know, and we touched on this earlier. I think there could actually be a huge undervote for president. That possibility, you know, a record undervote. You never see it. People come out for the top of the ticket. This year, I think that number is going to be lower than everything else.
Now, I do want to get onto that. We teased that a little bit going into the break, but Ted Cruz coming out and supporting and stumping for Donald Trump. Now, this was a man, I mean, Donald Trump had accused Ted Cruz's father of being part of a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. What is behind this? Explain this to me, Laurie.
I don't know how to explain it other than that in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, I would assume as well, you better get in line is the attitude. And, you know, I mean, Jeff Flake got a lot of publicity for what he did this year, which is to say, no, I can't support him. But he's pretty much on an island in the Republican Party.
I think all politics is local, and Ted Cruz will have some issues in Texas. Texas is still going to vote for Donald Trump. So you got to get on that bandwagon, even if you reluctantly are tied to it.
Especially if you want a future and to try to run again, and you want that Republican apparatus to be behind you.
Remember,
but if the electorate is shifting, there's been a lot of, remember there was the post-mortem after the 2012 that Republicans have to be doing more to reach out Hispanics.
Yeah.
I would think that if you want a future in politics of the Republican Party, I mean, how can you be sticking by Trump, who is just despised by Latinos?
But I think you have to remember that there's a strong 40-odd% of Republicans, of that base, that is supporting Donald Trump. So that's a really good, you know, group of people to start with when you are going to do future campaigns.
But you can't get beyond that unless you broaden the base and turn that little pup tent into a big tent.
You know,
again.
I got to tell you, it depends. Donald Trump is broadening the base right now. We are not writing off Tuesday because, you know, Hillary has it in the bag. He has a good chance of winning. Not a great chance, but he still has a good chance of winning, depending on turnout. Donald Trump is starting to turn out Republicans and independents. So it really depends. He may broaden the base enough to win.
But if he doesn't, what do they do then?
Yeah. And last
I can't wait for another autopsy, the 2016 autopsy.
And last question, Donald Trump is going to go around talking a lot about media bias out there. Do you see media bias in the way that the press, by and large, has been covering this campaign?
Well, I certainly think that there is a perception that there's media bias, and I see individual instances of it. We're at a time when a lot of the media, and especially I'm talking about broadcast media here, define that, not broadcast so much as digital media define themselves. They want to talk to their audience. And we, as Americans, don't really want to have a conversation. We just want somebody to tell us that we're right. We don't want to be informed. We want to be right. And so if you give me information that disagrees with my point of view, obviously you're biased. And I think that's part of what is done.
Well, let me just say, part of the bias is you guys are showing what Donald Trump says. I mean, that's the craziness right there. That's your bias.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back here on Politics Unplugged.
Honey, how's the unpacking going?
Great. Packing peanuts everywhere. Bad. Raccoons everywhere. Also bad. Fast internet everywhere? Good. The Cox Promise guarantees you the same fast speeds no matter where you move or your money back. Bundles start at $89.99 with no contract and free pro install.
Nope.
I was diagnosed with lung cancer. As a firefighter approaching a fire, I had to confine it, contain it, and attack it. And I went to Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
We were able to do a thoracoscopic surgery where we used tiny incisions. We put a camera inside the chest, and Tony was able to go home 3 days after surgery.
We have excellent technology that allow us to perform very specialized procedures for patients who have lung disease.
Our individualized care model gives each lung patient specific treatment options with innovative procedures that are changing the way we fight lung cancer.
Here in Phoenix, we have targeted therapies looking for a specific molecular target and then matching the patient to that treatment.
To learn more about these targeted therapies, advanced procedures, and the experienced physicians who deliver them, go to cancercenter.com.
Lung cancer is a very deadly disease. We can make the most impact when it's in its earlier stages.
The evolution of cancer care is here. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits. Appointments available now.
Putting a wife to work is a very dangerous thing. When I come home and dinner's not ready, I go through the roof.
Grab him by the and when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
More accusers coming forward to say they were sexually assaulted by Donald Trump.
And I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed.
Donald Trump walked into the dressing room while contestants, some as young as 15, were changing.
I standing there with no clothes. You see these incredible looking women. I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. She ate like a pig.
A person who's flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
So you treat women with respect?
I can't say that either.
All right, good.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's now time to talk it out with our partners from First Strategic. With us today is Marcus Dellartino and Barry Dill. Gentlemen, thanks for coming back. Now let's move beyond this election to one possible scenario where Hillary Clinton is elected. Donald Trump says if this happens, the country will immediately be thrown into one constitutional crisis after another. Here.
A high-ranking government official has been caught selling her public office, threatening national security, and engaging in a massive criminal cover-up. If she were to win, it would create unprecedented constitutional crisis.
Not exactly sounding like, he's going to go quietly into that good night, right?
No, and it also sounds like a loser to me. Like he knows that he's going to lose, and he's setting the stage up so that his words will seem prophetic once it's over. Because let's don't forget, Donald Trump goes on trial shortly after the election on the Trump University issue. So it works both ways.
Now, how accurate can this be? I mean, do you see this FBI thing moving forward into presidency should Hillary Clinton win, and really hamstringing her a lot like what we saw with Whitewater with the Clintons back in the 90s?
I would expect that half the people at the FBI will be out of work the day after the election should this happen.
That's
probably close to 3/4. So, no, I doubt it's going to happen. If you're scared of constitutional crisis. What's more terrifying thought is the electorate deadlocking at 269 each, and the House of Representatives gets to pick the next president of the United States.
Which has happened 3 times in history, by the way.
And keep in mind the Supreme Court's missing a judge.
Now, at the same time, Trump is using part of his closing argument to stick on that economic message of him that he's been going, throughout this campaign. Here he is in Ohio going after those voters. We're feeling just left out of the economy right now.
America is running a nearly $800 billion annual trade deficit. In other words, our great negotiators, we're losing in a trade deficit.
Does it hurt his argument that on Friday we saw a jobs report come out where unemployment rates dipped under 5% to 4.9%? And I would argue probably more importantly, we saw wages go up by 2.8%. I mean, that's huge for a country that hasn't seen a lot of wage growth in a long time.
Well, one is, I think you and I are the only people that are actually having that conversation right now. The rest of the electorate isn't catching that news bite.
Yeah. Isn't that strange in a presidential election where you see this?
Because we haven't talked about policy. Barry and I are both frustrated with the fact we haven't talked any policy during this presidential election. The entitlements are going to kill the budget. We've all known it. We haven't talked about it at all. But it does go to his point about NAFTA and trade agreements, and that's what, and by the way, that also has been attracting some, at least, members of the Democratic Party or independents to the Trump campaign. If you are a lifelong union worker and NAFTA has done you wrong, Trump becomes more attractive to you.
Yeah. And
well, this is what I would say about that is that by all measures, most measures of economists who have measured the 2 different tax plans, his tax plan is about 25% more toward the deficit than Hillary Clinton's would be. Now, so it's kind of hypocritical to be, you have to talk apples and apples. You can't mix and have it both ways.
Now let's forget a little bit about Trump's economic message. Instead, here's President Obama going after the messenger.
People say, well, he's going to be our voice. Are you serious? This is a guy who spent 70 years, his whole life, born with a silver spoon, showing no respect for working people.
What do you think about that? Is that going to work? I mean, the president seems like he's having a lot of fun going out there on the campaign.
I think he's having a ball. I think he's a great messenger. And what you're seeing is the Clinton campaign is in full bore GOTV mode. They think they have the popular vote by 2 to 3%, and while Trump, on the other hand, is still out trying to figure out places that he can poke into the firewall and get his fingers in there and bring more people in, which there's no appearance that we had people move as a result of the FBI leak, if you want to call it that.
Now, obviously, Donald Trump has been going after those workers in the Rust Belt. Do you think President Obama's message, do you think he's going to be able to keep those Rust Belt states from flipping to red? I mean, we're talking about those key ones, like Michigan in particular.
Right. They're on the move. There's no doubt about it. And Trump's message, I mean, look, it's been working. But the most effective message for him has been this Comey email investigation that continues to go. But, I don't think that the character assassination stuff is essentially going to change anybody's mind in this election. If you're undecided on a lot different level than
home,
right?
Because they just don't want to deal with it anymore.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have for tonight. But be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.